Good evening, good evening, good evening. Hello, everybody. I am Kurt, the crash test dummy. Sorry for that quick delay. I was having some simulcast issues, so it looks like I'm not going to be simulcasting on my Facebook or YouTube channel tonight. Excuse me, my YouTube tonight. I am trying the horizontal/vertical mode tonight, so I'm doing the total vertical podcast tonight on Crash Test Dummy. Tonight here on Crash Test Dummy, we are talking about Uncharted. What is Uncharted? Well, Uncharted the movie, not the video game. Uncharted was, of course, the movie with Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg, based on the video game. Uncharted, one of the better games. Actually, Roger Ebert was a fan of the game, but he said not a lot of family emotion in that one, but I think that there was an awful lot in that. So that is the topic of tonight on the Crash Test Dummy. What we do here at Crash Test Dummy, we talk about safety. I'm Kurt Austin Live. I'm one of your safety guys. I am the Crash Test Dummy. We talk about keeping people safe at work. That's sometimes a very boring topic, so I like to compare that to some movies. So the movie of the week this week was Uncharted, the movie, with Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg. Fantastic movie, fantastic stunts, an awful lot of great retro throwback to some of the movies that I love from the 80s. Of course, fantastic scene. Let's start with that one. Tom Holland doing a fantastic Tom Cruise impersonation of Cocktail. Was that not a great scene? I thought that was a fantastic scene. What do we see an awful lot of there? Fantastic. I love that word. Some great eye-hand coordination. You think about the movie, Tom Cruise, Cocktail. A lot of it was a hippie shake going on top of back then. So a lot of movement, a lot of fighting. So let's go to the bar scene. The fighting in the bar scene. Tom Holland is throwing objects around all over the place. What does that have to do with safety? I am the Crash Test Dummy. We throw things, we break things, we crash into things. I'm the Crash Test Dummy. How did that work? In the movie Uncharted with Tom Holland, well, he was doing an awful lot of cocktail type of moves where he was just throwing cocktail drinks around. He had a shaker glass, he had the actual mixers, he had a tremendous amount of ice, he had stuff going everywhere. So the cool part is, while he's juggling all these items around, he's able to toss them, turn them, and he actually was able to use them as weapons. So it was a great thing. Fallen objects, so he throw them at a bad guy, hits them in the head, distracts them. Fallen objects at work, well, it hits you, hurts you, could hurt something. Fall on your foot, we talked that one in toe safety. Make sure you have your boots on. Fallen object hits you in the head, make sure you have a hard hat on. Not fun, but I can relate that to a movie. I can always relate safety to a movie, so have a hard hat on. You're not going to have that in a movie scene, but those are just the simple things that you see in a bar. So what else happens in the bar? Well, he's actually getting a shot. He's got a bottle of vodka. He's doing the twist. Excuse my hand going in the frame right there. He has the twists. He has the turns. He has all the fun stuff happening there. But what he also has is a bottle where he was teased saying, this is not a time for drinking type of idea, paraphrasing, but basically he's taking a shot of pure alcohol and using that as a flamethrower. And we just lost a light here somewhere. Excuse me about that, folks. Anyway, the light power just went out. I think I have too many lights on. Anyway, so what we are looking at here is the... One sec here. There we go, light back. There we go. Sorry about that. There we are. So what we were looking at, power restart on my laptop. So where were we? We were talking about the movie Cocktail, Tom Holland in the bar scene, basically shooting flames out of his mouth using alcohol and a lighter that he could never get to work in the movie. However, what they could do with that one, that is basically a fire retardant. Would be using that one. You're not going to get a fire extinguisher, right? But it's a way to actually make sure that you control the flame around you. So fire safety, I can always put that in a movie. What else do they do? Well, this movie has an awful lot of harness fighting. So what's the good part in this movie? After this fight scene, they're taking on person after person after person, but there's an awful lot of ricochet fighting. So what they do is they use, again, harnesses. There are so many harnesses used in movies. So the harness that they're using is just a waist belt. I see these an awful lot in mining situations where you just need something on the end of the line just to keep them from going over the edge, or a leading edge type of technology. In the real world, it's called leading edge or leading line, that type of idea, or SRLs, that type of idea. It's just a line to keep people from going too far. So they're used very effectively with another person or a third person acting as a belayer or someone to add some sort of extra motion. So when Tom Holland's getting hit or reacting, he can actually use this waist belt to gain momentum or lose momentum to get a little extra lift or extra bounce. So they're using an awful lot of mining belt type of ideas as harnesses. The scary thing about what they're doing is he actually is starting to use a mining belt, a harness belt at height. So they're actually, in some of these areas, some of his fight scenes, he's actually 20, 30 feet in the air using just a waist belt. And I have seen they have a third person there with a belayer, but it's extremely risky when you don't have a 5-point harness wrapped all the way around you. Now, looking at this setup here that I was going through on on YouTube, I was looking at Uncharted behind the stunts scene. So taking some of my tea there, looking at that scene there, where Tom Holland is one of the many scenes where he's being rigged up in just a type of a harness around the waist, a waist belt. Now there are 98 stunt credits in this movie. Just checking my notes. I do have notes on this, so everyone wants to look that up. There are 98 stunt credits in this movie. Everything from stunt riggers and performers to a stunt previs. That's a new one for me that I haven't seen before, but makes complete sense using a pre-visualization on the actual stunt scene, or as they're saying, a good way to do it is to manifest or create the scene in your mind so that you can see what's happening, so you can coordinate the scene properly. That being said, there's a tremendous amount of coordinators in this scene as well as utility stunts. A good example would be these huge bar scenes that they're fighting in. You'd have to have an awful lot of utility stunts. So there are moving objects, there's moving people, there's a dance floor involved, there's bar patrons involved, there's moving objects. So you'd have to have utility stunts as well as a coordinator and all of these ideas. And that's before you actually get to the characters themselves, who actually have to start fighting themselves. So that's where you get beyond stunt coordinators and stunt riggers into a fight coordinator. So you actually have the specialists who are teaching people how to fight before you get into the people at how to perform their stunts, before you even have everybody else involved. And overseeing all of that is your health and safety officer. Now, they don't know nearly as much as the stunt coordinators and the stunt performers, so they would really go to them on their specialist knowledge, and that's where most safety rules come from. For example, ANSI, I've mentioned ANSI before, the American National Standards Institute for Safety. Did I say that right? Could be. Anyway, I'll look that one up again. They decide on the rules for the standards for working, basically through Occupational Safety and Health Act. So through the OSHA rules, they have to have specialists on board, and all these rules through ANSI are written by the workers themselves. So they would actually ask stunt performers, coordinators, people that are in the industry, what is safe for that industry. In their industry, they think that a waist belt is sufficient. In a construction industry or even a roofer, you need a better harness than that. So they prefer you to have a waist belt at the bare minimum. Most of them, you're looking at a 5-point harness. Even when you're looking at a safety vest, a high-vis vest, it even has a loophole. If you look in the back of the vest, so that you can actually get your 5-point harness through there. So you look at this movie Uncharted, with all the actors, all the scenes, everybody else, you're not seeing any of them having a harness up by their neck. Most of them are around their waist. So the problem with that is they're not completely secure, but it allows them to do some fantastic aerial scenes. So the actors, if they're strong, like Tom Holland, believe it or not, you have to be extremely strong because they are maneuvering and doing all these flips using just the extra help of a person belaying the line down below them and actually the person rigging the stunt. So they have most of this, they push themselves off, they actually do most of the movement, but they actually have to twist, turn, and actually perform all of these stunts themselves. So they're actually a tremendous amount of work put into these stunts. So I think that stunt performers and the coordinators, the riggers on this are fantastic because the way I'm looking at it, they did absolutely as much as possible to keep it as real as possible. So even though there's an awful lot of flack or grief given to the amount of green screen used, I understand that because they're absolutely epic scenes. The fight scenes are fantastic and they want to keep the actors safe, but at the same time, they want to have a great performance. So to do that, you allow them in a safe area, working on just a waist belt, which allows them to be safe, gives them an extra help or an extra step so they can actually rebound or jump off or actually participate in these incredible fight scenes. But at the same time, they can also stay safe. So just by using these little wee waist belts, they can perform and actually do these incredible stunts without having to worry about their own safety. So even though they say the green screen scenes are a little bit over the top, I think using the green screen for these effects are absolutely fantastic. So that's one of the great things about some of these harnesses that they can do. Now, taken from that harness to the actual bigger scenes when they're actually going up into the airplane, again, it's the same concept. It's still just a one harness that goes around their waist. Now, around their waist, they're able to move, but if you actually, in the behind the scenes, you can actually see him jumping from one green screen box to another green screen box, but it's still just him with a waist belt and the one person, the rigger, belaying the actual cord down below. Now, that's great for him being able to perform as an actor, and he looks great. It takes an awful lot of muscle coordination, an awful lot of trust in that person holding just a safety line. When you're jumping essentially 15 feet in the air from one box to another box with just a rope and a belt around your waist. So I'm pulling out my waist right here, but basically it's just something around your waist 12 feet in the air, and Tom Holland is jumping from one thing to another box all at the same time, trying to hit his mark, say his lines, control his face and spin at the same time, grab an object. So kudos to these actors. It's absolutely phenomenal what they're doing. So I keep looking at my screen, just looking at Tom Holland doing his acting right there. It's amazing what they can do. And again, that of course comes down to his age. He would react differently in his scene than, say, Mark Wahlberg. Mark Wahlberg had different type of scenes, but they actually did a great job where there's a huge chase scene, and they're using the rigging belts again, the mining belts again, where Tom Holland would be able to jump, 10, 12 feet using these belaying rigs to get a little bit further. And then you see Mark Wahlberg trying to catch up to him. And all of a sudden you hear him saying a line, "Oh, I have a bum ankle," or something to that effect, just to show the difference of an aging person in a movie or passing the torch. Same thing in the safety industry. Like, how are they going to be able to work at the age of 50 as opposed to the age of 20-some that Tom Holland is? So all the gear that they're wearing, the mining belt, the rigging belt that goes around, the 5-point harness going over the shoulder, even how far that they are placing these boxes would change for someone like Tom Holland versus Mark Wahlberg. Even though they're only both maybe 5'6", 5'7", 5'8", it's still going to be very different as opposed to someone like myself who is 6'2" and weighs probably the same as them. So those are some of the adjustments they have to make, and that's what the stunt performers and the coordinators and the riggers have to worry about when they're thinking about safety. Just as if you're jumping off a building. So there weren't an awful lot of big off the scene pillow jumps. Most of these were done by harnesses. But the same thing when you're jumping off a building into a huge pillow, you have to take into account the size of the person, because if they're 6'2" and they're doing an end-over-end spin or their end-over-end fall, whether they're in a harness, whether in the harness or just a straight fall or a spin, someone who's that tall is going to spin slower than someone who's only 5'6", who is a trained actor or a trained dancer, someone who's very cognizant of their own abilities. So he's going to spin at a different rate than someone who's not physically as fit. So the person in charge, the stunt coordinator, would have to know all this. So he'd work with the actors, Tom Holland or Mark Wahlberg, trying to get to know how they spin, how tight they are, even how tight they coil themselves for some sort of action. Or, for example, how far Tom Holland could jump from one box to another box in front of a green screen to make it look like he's actually falling and reaching and scrambling for that next box, but at the same time not falling because they want the same amount of fear to go into the people watching his performance as he might feel trying to reach for that next box, knowing he still has that safety belt around him, but at the same time thinking he might fall. So that's how they get these great performers and these great actors to work together, is just being able to talk to the actor, feel how far they can go, push them a little bit further while still keeping them safe. It's kind of the fun thing about what they're doing in the safety world. Hi, Koi, thank you for joining us. I can movie talk again here. So what's the other big scenes that they had there? We had the airplane scene. The driving scenes. So the driving scenes in these movies are just always over the top. There's only so many things you can do when you're driving, but at the same time, they do it in cooler and cooler cars. So what do you do when you're driving? Again, I've come down to how they use stunt riggers. The stunt riggers are the coolest portion, where they can focus on the driver or the person inside of the car without worrying about the risk. So on top of the roof of the cars, but they did this in the latest Van City Reynolds movie. They actually have a person on top of the car, driving the car, working on the pedals, basically a cockpit on top of the car, so the actors inside it can actually perform their stunts. So there's an awful lot of back and forth and give and take on these type of things, just to keep the actors safe so they can actually perform, hit their lines, hit their marks, and actually not get hurt in the process. Because I've said this before, going back to so many things like Uma Thurman, Brad Pitt, these actors are really pushing themselves hard, like Tom Holland jumping from box to box, or even Mark Wahlberg, going back to all of his scenes he's done over the years. They take its toll on the body, and they really put themselves through an awful lot of pain just for their art. So talk about suffering for your art. These stunt performers, these stunt coordinators, they're there for a reason. That's their career. Listen to them so that guys like Tom Holland don't get hurt and can actually perform properly. Like George Clooney, ever since his movie, he hasn't been able to perform properly because of a bad back. Uma Thurman has a bad back because of a bad neck because of Kill Bill 2. Tom Holland, if he slips and trips on one of these boxes, he's going to be out of work for a long time. Think about how many workers that puts out of work. Going all the way back to Dirty Dancing is another procedure where Patrick Swayze slipped off of a log, and he was out of work for weeks, and that put the rest of the cast and the crew on hiatus. So these stunt performers are there for a reason. Listen to them, work with them, so that the actors can actually perform, so that people like ourselves that love these movies can actually watch them work. So what we like to do is just stay safe at work. Part of it is watching these great, cool movies, these amazing movies, these great actors who are a lot of fun, and then bring a little bit of retro back, pulling some of those cocktail type of moves, some of the Indiana Jones of the Uncharted back into the world, so that we can enjoy and forget about what the dangerous things are in the world, and have a little bit of fun. At the same time, realizing that there are dangerous things, and how we can make things work safely. That's what I do. It's now my 15 minutes are up. I like to do this every Monday night at 7:40 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, is talk about how we can stay safe at work. 15 minutes is my basic standard because that's how we have to keep our eyes clean. 15 minutes of safety, wash your eyes out. That's where I came up with 15 minutes. My 15 minutes are up. I am the Crash Test Dummy, Kurt Austin Live, one of your safety guys. We are going to call it a night. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for your 15 minutes this Monday night. Have yourself a great evening. Take care.